Yeah, stick a fork in it. This thing is coming to an end. Seriously. Results are coming in, and just as we figured, Joe Biden, unstoppable force, and unfortunately, he is not meeting an immovable object in the form of Bernie Sanders. Florida already called for Joe Biden. Doesn't look like Bernie's going to be putting up too much of a fight in Illinois either. Okay, so yeah, get ready, folks. Biden 2020, man. It's gonna be Biden versus Trump. I've been saying it's gonna take a miracle. I don't see the miracle happening at this point in time. I really truly do not. And Bernie, of course, I'm gonna support my friend Joe Biden. Cool. Don't run again, please, dude. Seriously, do not run again, because the next time we actually need someone who has some backbone. Okay. We need someone that's actually got a spine the next time around. And you may have had a spine at one point, Bernie, but it is not there anymore. It's not there. I don't know if your vigor and your ferocity, to do the right thing for the working class and to fight back against the establishment has weakened with old age, but it's not what it was, we could argue, once upon a time. Okay, so this thing looks like it's pretty much over with. Okay, especially with the whole pandemic thing coming on strong now. Yeah, I don't see this going anywhere for Bernie Sanders. That being said, let's talk about this pandemic for a minute. So multiple other channels are running live streams, could already be over with by the time I get this uploaded to YouTube, talking about how even in spite of this coronavirus pandemic, they've continued to hold the polls, the primaries and the voting, even though the CDC has recommended that no more than 50 people gather in one spot. Okay, and that's affecting a lot of people. They've canceled schools right here in my backyard. The group that I have meetings with, we're canceled for at least 2 weeks. Okay, we got the notification yesterday from the people up top. We're done for the rest of the month, and we may resume, but that will be determined at a later date. But it's 2 weeks for right now. Okay, and we'll see what happens after the 2 weeks is up. So they still have voting. So you're putting people at risk. Wow. I mean, that's concern for your constituents, huh? We're trying to get people to quarantine, not gathering big crowds of people, and yet you're bringing them out to vote in the polls for an election anyway. Wow. Okay. That's just beautiful. So that being said, think what you will about that, but there's one thing I want to focus on. Jimmy Dore covered this earlier today, and Kyle Kalinske brought it up, I believe, yesterday on his channel. I'd been looking at running a video on this for a little bit of time. Okay. When this whole pandemic started, the bubble market that we were sitting in finally popped. And the stock market started free falling, going downhill. I believe that at some point, if it wasn't the first day, we have hit a territory where we have seen the biggest points loss in the stock market since the Great Depression. Okay. Now, what's the problem here? Okay. The stock market falling like that, when the stock market does great, in a way, I guess the average American can feel some of it because there might be more job creation or whatever. But do we really feel it financially? Not really. But when it has a free fall and goes downhill, we all feel it. You're going to have layoffs. The cost of living is going to go up. Everything becomes harder on the blue collar guy. So in the middle of this free fall, yes, we're going to feel it. Okay. Um, and for those of you who don't see the correlation there, I mean, just go back and look at the Great Depression, for God's sakes. Who were the people really suffering the most throughout the Great Depression? You know, it was lower middle class, okay? Lower income earners in the country. Back in the Great Depression, things got so bad, they had to build basically camp towns for people who couldn't afford houses and whatnot, and they named them Hoovervilles. A kind of a tribute to the man that was president that oversaw the crash of 29, Herbert Hoover. Okay? So as a nice little tribute to that lovely president, by the way, fun fact, that was up until 2016, the last time we had a Republican president, Senate, and House all in office at the same time. One of the Republicans had control of the three branches. Okay. That being said, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. Stock market is absolutely going down the toilet. Now, these brilliant minds, and if you've watched these videos, you know exactly what we're going to talk about, decided that we need to prop up this stock market. Whoa, it's horrible. It's going to crash the economy. What can we do? Okay, so they invest $500 billion to prop it up. I think it lasted about an hour, 2 hours, and then back to square one. So you put all that money in, and it did absolutely nada. You didn't prop up for that whole day. You injected it, and you lost every single bit of it. Now, that didn't work. So, back to the drawing board. What should we do now? Oh, I know. Let's do it again, but multiply the amount times 3, because 500 billion did so well that, excuse my language there, folks. But yeah, what, an hour, 2 hours? What do you think multiplying it by 3 is going to do? If that amount, and $500 billion is no tiny little amount of money here, people. Okay, if it couldn't do any better than that, what is multiplying it by 3 going to do? Yes, it's a lot of money, but it didn't help. So they put 1.5 trillion into the stock market to prop it up. Oh, and what did we get out of that? Oh my God, one good day, me oh my, oh, we're on track now, man. The stock market's gonna be fine. We had that one good day, and the very next day, bam, right back in. What? So, literally, that quick, complete turnaround. Okay? Absolute complete turnaround right there. Right back to where we went. And then it was either the next day or within the few days after the stock market hit such a free-for-all right out of the gate, it triggered emergency switches, and they had to shut down trading a minute in. 1 minute into trading. Shut it down. Shut it down. Because the good thing about today's trading is you've got triggers in place that if something, starts going too bad too quickly, the computers will shut down trading, which they didn't have back in 1929. Okay? Point being, we're going to have an economic crisis if we're not very careful. Some would say we're already there. We certainly got the pandemic going on, and for God's sakes, we got people stocking up on more freaking toilet paper out there, and I don't get that. I get you don't want to go out. Okay, CDC's advising you on that. Great. What sense does it make to get 3-4 buggies of toilet paper and paper towels and not one shred of edible food sharing space with all that paper. Are you serious? So what's going to happen when you run out of food? Oh, you won't come out and get some more. Well, then what the hell are you doing buying all this toilet paper for? Because you're going to need to eat unless you're going to figure out how to eat toilet paper sandwiches until this whole thing is over with. I ain't getting no sense out of that whatsoever. But nonetheless, we're already in the middle of a pandemic, okay? The economy, people could say we're already on the way to having, a really big, really, really bad time. But the bigger point that I want to focus on from all that is this. The next time they tell you that they can't pay for a single payer healthcare plan, call bull. Seriously, call them on it. They're it. If they couldn't pay for it, how did they just cough up the same amount of money, not counting interest, that it cost us to have the war in Iraq in a matter of days? I want you to think about that. We squabble about bailing out Social Security and not putting the money back in there to do that. They can't put money back into Social Security. Think about that for a moment, okay? Think about Social Security. Don't even, let's just set healthcare off to the side for a moment. Social Security was a program where you're supposed to pay in as you work and collect after you retire. Assuming you're within the certain, wage bracket. If you make too much money, you don't draw because you get penalized, okay? You don't even pay taxes into it. If you made over a certain dollar amount a year, that you pay up to that point and then you stop, okay? That being said, starting with Johnson and following suit from presidents on after, the government then looked at that nice big piggy bank sitting there and took money out and put IOUs back in their place. And the reason Johnson first tapped it was to go to war in Vietnam. So, care to take a guess what most of the others tapped it for? Not all tapped it for this particular reason, but a lot of them tended to tap it for the good old military-industrial complex. Nonetheless, they tapped and tapped and tapped and tapped and tapped away at what was sitting into that Social Security piggy bank till they cleaned it out. And now what you've got a system of, pretty much, are the people working, paying Social Security taxes today are subsidizing the people collecting it. Meaning that when I pay taxes in, it's not for me to collect when I retire. It's for the people who are getting it right now, for them to collect because they took all their money away. They can't fix Social Security. They can't put that money back. Okay, and again, this is why I argue one of the flaws of Tulsi's healthcare plan was if you don't create something that's going to impact the frickin' government too, they tend to misrun it. Point in case Social Security. Don't get me wrong. I think Tulsi's plan is still great compared to what we've got today. But if you let the government just run it, and they don't have to adhere to that system because they're going to go buy their own private Cadillac plan, it's going to cost them a little more, but whatever. They vote themselves pay raises. They can afford it. Okay? They're going to go out, buy their own Cadillac plan. They will misrun ours, and it will be treated like Social Security. But under Bernie's, if everybody's getting the same thing, they're going to be personally impacted if they let it go to pot. So they're probably not going to want to do that, huh? Okay? So that being said, you need to keep that in mind. They can't replace the money they've taken out of Social Security. And they're telling us they can't pay for something that's going to cost, what are they saying, like $30 trillion over a 10-year period? Can't pay for that. Can't pay for that. No, too much. Yet in a matter of 3 days, we can cough up $2 trillion out of thin air to save our best friends on Wall Street. You know why, right? Because it's not the people like you and me who are breaking out all that big money to get their sorry asses reelected. It's the bankers on Wall Street. So, of course, they're going to do what they think is best for their good old buddy old pals on Wall Street. Because that is who their real best friends are, and that's where their loyalties lie, to the rich and the powerful. But again, the next time they tell you they can't pay for it, call bullshit, because they're most certainly full of it. So, this I think speaks volumes. And if there is only one good thing that could come out of this, it's the fact that now they're looking at talking about pushing some sort of like a temporary Medicare for all plan. Hopefully we could keep it permanent. But they're looking at pushing a temporary version of that as well as a UBI plan to help subsidize Americans through this tough time. I was just watching the live stream with Big Talk, Little Talk, and Israel and Dennis Potvin. He had Dennis on as his guest, okay? And they were talking about, maybe Trump might keep the UBI as a permanent thing for political brownie points, and how that would be so great. It would be wonderful, absolutely wonderful. I think it could really do good on Donald Trump's part if he could get it, to work. But let's remember one thing. There was another Republican president once upon a time who tried to get ahead of the curve against the Democrat Party and do something that would get over very popular with the lower and middle class. And he wanted to pass a form of a universal basic income. And that man was Richard Nixon. And he almost did it until the establishment Republicans talked him out of it. And of course, they tried to bring up a little history lesson from, the UK where it was tried and supposedly failed and this and that. And it would squash people's self-esteem and the will to work, and they'd become dependent and lazy and blah. Just typical old talking points you hear from a lot of people. Okay, so we've decided to not go forward with it. So it wouldn't be the first time we've almost seen a Republican do something like that, only to be talked out of it later on by advisors. And when you look at Donald Trump, he tends to do what the people around him talk him into, it seems like. And I don't see the Larry Kudlows, the Steve Mnuchins, the Mick Mulvaney's, the Mike Pompeos, the Mike Pence's. I don't see any of these people being people who are going to try to talk Donald Trump into doing something along those lines. I just don't see that happening. But hey, if it happens, great, 2 thumbs up, because that's something that I was very, very adamant on my support for Andrew Yang about at the time. Okay, he's come out and endorsed Joe Biden now. Like you, Andrew, but I don't like the whole sellout thing. Not really a fan of that. But that being said, definitely everyone, take heed to what the CDC is warning about. Practice, good, safe sanitation out there. We've got to try to get this thing under control. And my thoughts and prayers are for anybody out there who may be watching this. If you've got, someone in your family that's been impacted, my thoughts and prayers are with you on this, because things are getting worse. And hopefully we can get this thing, all under control here pretty soon. Just remember one thing. When they had people come out and vote today to do this, even though the CDC's recommended not to, I want you to think about things that have been done lately to stop, or try to stop. The NBA's canceled a season, and even things like the WWE, who put on shows every single week with big crowds, have decided that they're going to, film the television shows at their performance center with an empty ringside area. So it's just the wrestling, and there's no audience in attendance. And here's the thing that's bad enough. They've already done that with their weekly television shows. WrestleMania, which is like the WWE Super Bowl, basically, okay, supposed to take place in Tampa, Florida this year, 70-something thousand people, and they have even announced now, as big of an event as that is, something unprecedented taking place here, they're going to hold a frickin' WrestleMania at that same empty performance center. Unheard of. So when you've got things like that taking place, yet we're still going to not postpone some primaries until we can kind of get this thing under control, absolutely disgraceful in my opinion. Absolutely disgraceful.